The argument was striking isn't good because if I just try to control the weapon arm with one hand while I hit with the other hand, I don't have control.
I think this is a good example of confirmation bias. Somebody that probably has good intent, but their own biases have allowed them to ignore the process and ignore variables and ignore the reality of a situation because they're so outcome focused. The path of least resistance for them is to not do the things that scare them or frighten them and to do the things that are very familiar to them. And so we just pretend that other stuff either doesn't exist or that it's just bad.
Welcome to the Second Plan A podcast, where we take hard-earned lessons from the mats and convert them into tools for navigating life's challenges.
Is that what we do?
I think so. Where we take hard-earned lessons from trying to run a podcast and convert them to lessons for the mats and for life. I'm Amber Hoover. I'd rather stick to the plan.
I'm Ryan Hoover, and I don't have anything clever to say.
I don't think I put anything in there for you. So, all right. On this episode, we're talking about intent, not just what you do, but why you do it. In fighting, a punch can be a finish, a feint, or a path to create space. And the same is true of choices in life. I was going to say chaos in life. It would have also fit. We'll talk about how naming the goal and preparing for it to make changes. Wow. We'll talk about how naming the goal.
This is going great.
I know. Naming the goal and preparing for it to change makes your decisions clearer and your second plan A a lot more useful. Are you ready?
Sure.
That's the only answer at this point. Awesome. In 1978,
Okay.
A maintenance team was tasked with cleaning or dredging the bottom of the Chesterfield Canal in England when they hit a snag. They came across a large train that today is not working for me. They did not come across a train in the canal. They came across a large chain that they struggled to remove, but they stayed committed to moving it. Gosh, why am I not doing okay today? They stayed committed to moving it, though.
I'm glad I don't have to edit these.
You're telling me. They stayed committed to moving it, though, trying a variety of different tricks until they ultimately succeeded by attaching the chain to their dredger and dragging it out along with a giant wooden block that it was attached to. With that removed, the team heads off for lunch, only to be interrupted by a frantic police officer who was walking by and observing the usually calm and tranquil canal now had a large whirlpool in it.
The large block was a plug.
Indeed. By the time the crew made it to the canal and their work site, the canal was gone. They would find it was 1.5 miles of the canal gone. The giant chain they pulled was a plug, which was common for English canal designs at the time. The canal had been completed in 1777, but all records of the plugs and locations had been destroyed in the Blitz. Did you know that story?
No.
I thought that was pretty wild. So, the plugs were designed to be removed as needed, and there are incidents where it's been used intentional and accidentally pulled. So it wasn't this terrible disaster or anything. It worked as designed.
Mm-hmm.
But they had no idea that's what it was, and their commitment to an outcome made some of their decisions a little less intelligent.
Yeah.
I would say, because their job was to clear the debris they came across. They hit this large chain. They couldn't pull it up in their normal methods. And rather than stopping, thinking, reaching out, trying to figure out why this chain wouldn't budge in the regular way, they were like, well, we've got to clear this. So let's do it by any means possible. Which is funny because, and this is why being a human is so hard, they stayed committed to the goal. They didn't let an obstacle get in the way. They had flexible thinking to solve the problem. But maybe they shouldn't have been so focused on just the idea of clearing out the river of all debris and realize that, maybe there's something else going on here. Not that I would have that kind of flexible thinking, but I know you would. So the plan I have for this episode, it's going to take us through a journey of intentions, goals, decision-making, outcomes, and maybe some regrets. And I think a lot of what we'll discuss is still foreign to some fight students out there, but I know there are coaches out there posting on the internet who do not understand this either. That while you might have an outcome or a result help guiding you through the process, you still have to be really flexible in how you approach it.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this a lot in self-defense. If your goal is to get away safely, to be home,
right?
but how you get there isn't cut and dry.
Yeah.
And your intent might be to try to hit this person once and run, and eventually you getting home safe means taking them to the ground, controlling them, and waiting for help. Well, like the situation changes, variables change, and if you're too focused on one outcome, you can make poor choices.
Mm-hmm. If you're talking about it in like a martial arts self-defense kind of context, it's very common to see this very linear way of approaching violence, I guess, not allowing for much variable or variation in the process. It's if they do A, I do B, they do C, I do D, that kind of thing. That kind of syllogism that I think is fine for an initial framework. Like when you're first learning something new, you need some sort of like baseline.
Yeah.
It becomes problematic in our world when the baseline becomes like the thing,
only line.
Yeah. It's because it's just not realistic.
Right.
There's no way to account for all the variables, from the timing, the environment, the attributes of the defender, the attributes of the attacker, the number of people involved, on either side or both sides. And so when you start trying to just give somebody a direction, that's based solely on if this, then that, we're setting them up for failure. And we're not giving them the opportunity to learn how to think and problem solve in real time. I mean, if you go back to the canal story, it's all right. We have a task, we have a goal, and anything that gets in the way, be damned.
Yeah.
Well, there's a thing in our way. Let's move the thing. Instead of having enough kind of leeway to think, well, why is this thing here, and why is it so difficult to move? And
Right.
maybe there's something beyond just this is trash.
When the canal was built in 1777, dredgers weren't a thing.
Right.
The equipment and the tools and the machinery to clean up silt and debris and things from the bottom of the canal didn't exist. And so if you think, okay, we built this more modern design and it's still having trouble getting this thing up, like what's going on? I think on the mats, a great example of this is front choke defense. If you aren't training a variety of responses from the attacker's job is to put their hands on their neck and then just kind of sit there and cower while you throw punches at them. If you're not training anything beyond that, you see pretty much the same thing happen. It's defend the choke, hit them with an elbow or a hammer fist, face them, throw some knees, punches, whatever, and leave. And if there at some point you were taught, let's put these 4 techniques together and do this, and you had to start somewhere. But if you're never taught, well, there are other concerns that should be accounted for, and you need to have other options.
Right.
You do the same thing over and over and over again, and now when the attacker decides, well, I'm not just going to sit here and get hit, I'm going to grab it in a different way, or I'm going to do this, then they don't have the flexibility in response. It's almost, training almost becomes a detriment because they've done this over and over and over and over and over. Yeah. And so they don't have that flexibility to realize, oh, this isn't the same, this isn't working, I need to adjust.
I think it doesn't almost become a detriment. I think it is. It's I've done this so many times the exact same way, pretty much every time, that as soon as a new variable is introduced, I don't really have the ability to change. I don't have the ability to switch my response, because it's programmed in. And at no point in my training have I allowed for variables. Has my coach allowed for variables? Has my coach talked about variables, introduced variables, those kinds of things? And so if every time somebody puts their hands around my neck, I pluck the hands, kick them in the groin, follow up with a knee and a hammer fist to the back of the neck, and then I run away, and then all of a sudden I kick them in the groin and they double leg me, it's like,
that's not how they said it would go.
Yeah. So it's there's planning. I have a general idea of where I would like to go with this and what the ultimate outcome is. But how I get there, especially when it comes to violence, can't be so hard and fast. It's It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. It's counterintuitive to a lot of different things because we talk about, well, shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line,
Hmm.
or if you think of goal setting, because ultimately, if we're talking self defense, it's goal setting. My goal is to get
Right.
away from harm, to survive, however, I'm going to judge that success. And then if you think about like setting a long term goal for yourself, like in 5 years, I want to have my degree and a job or whatever it might be.
Hmm.
And then you set smaller, more attainable goals along the way. And they're a very clear linear progression
Yeah.
typically. But on the mat and in training and for self defense, those small little wins and goals aren't always in order. They are finding the best possible place. They are dealing with the problem at hand. But when you think I'm going from here to surviving, you don't always know the variables that are going to come up.
Yeah. I mean, you rarely do, really.
Yeah, you won't
You
because
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
we don't get to
Um,
control anything as the good guys.
right. No, we don't pick the time, the place, how we're feeling that day, how many people there are, who's with me. None of that stuff that we get to choose. Literally, our weather here changed 30, 40 degrees in a day.
That was
And
terrible.
so you go from wearing shorts and t-shirt one day to pants and hoodie and jackets and whatever, and fighting is fighting, but those variables change things. Me wearing a hoodie gives somebody something extra to grab and hold on to, and that, on the flip side of it, then I probably have those opportunities as well if I know what to do with it. But if I always, in my training, everybody's dressed the same, everybody looks the same, we have the same kind of uniforms, for lack of a better term, then nobody's grabbing my hood and I'm not grabbing somebody's hood. And the small things like that can make a huge difference.
You mentioned uniform, and you meant uniform like
Yeah.
everybody's got to wear the gym shirt, the
Hmm.
pants, that sort of thing, and that exists inside training centers.
Yeah.
Um, but it made me think about the uniformity in attackers. If you have somebody new and they're working with a bunch of different people, more experienced people maybe, who attack and respond the same way,
Hmm.
as they progress through the program, they're going to attack and respond the same way.
Yeah.
And so it can become like a poison within the center if you have, a large majority of people who don't understand varying attacks and how important that is for training.
Right.
It's always your turn to a degree as
Yeah.
well. It's not just about the person doing the drill. The other person can't just check out.
I mean,
And
getting really good at fighting your favorite training partner is probably not incredibly helpful.
no,
Like
yeah,
you need a lot of touches. You need to look around the room and go get hands on with the big, tall, lanky person, or the short, stocky dude, or whatever, because it's going to change things. I
yeah,
mean, the
yeah,
way that they put their hands around your neck is going to be different. Their thick, meaty Snicker bar fingers is going to be different than somebody long and lanky. I mean, it just is what it is. And so getting really good at self defense versus somebody that you just like as a friend is
yeah.
probably not gonna prepare you in the way that you would hope.
We talked a lot about making sure your drills have purpose and not in our sporology course this past weekend, not just training with the same people and over again and
Yeah.
not getting really good at just fighting one person.
Yeah.
And that is an interesting kind of, if we dissect, okay, we do these self-defense moves. I talked about choke defense, so I'll stay there.
Yeah.
I defend the choke, and then, because I'm not going to physically hit my partner has to allow for some consideration that I'm not actually punching them in their face, but still try to respond in some correct way. And so there's a weird little give and take there, but what it's balanced by is having a fight program where you are trying to punch this person in the face and they are responding to you and trying to do their things, and so you get that interchange a little bit better. Are they moving away from me? Are they trying to close the distance? And you can actually respond in real time.
Right. And it has to be. I mean, not to get too far in the weeds, but I mean, there has to be a smart progression there, and it has to be set up in a way and run in a way that lends itself towards this gradual build up. I think in our industry, a lot of time, I think we've talked about the word empowerment and my disdain for it in
I'm
this
sure we
industry.
have.
And it it's similar here in that when we're talking about intent and intention and whatever, it's like when it comes to stuff like that, is it are you being helpful, or are you trying to feel like you're being helpful?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
because those are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, it's like when you've got a big project, or let's say all of a sudden we needed to just get this place really clean, and there's a lot of people milling around, and there's like 8 people that are just kind of moving things around and looking like they're doing something, and then
Hmm.
there's 2 that are actually doing all of the work.
Yeah.
The 8 are trying to feel helpful, but they're not. They don't really have any kind of intent behind what they're doing, because they don't have
Yeah.
a plan, a progression of what. I understand what we're trying to do, but I don't really understand how to get there.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
I
Right.
need somebody to tell me
Yeah.
where to go.
Yeah.
It's the thought that counts kind of thing.
I knew you didn't need to read my outline to get to that quote because we've talked about that quote before, but
I
I've
can't,
got that in here. I
it,
know. It could be the thought that counts if you did actually think.
yeah, that's the problem. Like,
Yeah.
it's like empowerment. I think a lot of times it's just this throwaway thing that people say, like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but did you actually think about it? Because to me, it doesn't seem like there was a whole lot of thought there. I think that it's this cultural catchphrase that allows people to kind of absolve themselves of not actually doing
Hmm.
anything.
Yeah.
It's like my truth. It's like there's no real, just because you say it's the thought that counts,
Right.
or
Or I meant well,
I
or he
meant
meant well.
well, or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, what is that? Like, I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. Well, and there's, usually people aren't, doing that so that they can just do nothing. If they have an intent to want to help, they probably honestly do have that. But oftentimes they talk themselves out of actually helping because they're so focused on, like, well, if I start sweeping over here, like, yeah, sweeping would help, but then if they didn't want me to sweep this section, or we have to do this and that, then it might change or it make this other thing harder, and they kind of talk themselves out by trying to have hindsight
Yeah.
beforehand. And that's where a lot of people make bad decisions. It's where you end up with like analysis paralysis because you're trying to what if through the whole situation.
Mhm.
When good decisions requires you to consider the facts you have now, make the fewest assumptions possible, like we talked about with Occam's razor on the
Mhm.
last episode, and then go from there, knowing that even if it ends up terrible, you considered all of your options and you made the best choice and decision you could from the knowledge you had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the context of what we were just talking about, like, literally just ask.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That
In that
that
context, literally, yeah.
Because if you are truly wanting to be a part of the solution, you truly want to help, you know, don't spend all this time on this internal dialogue. Just ask.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, because if I'm gonna base my actions on the best information available to me, then I need to actually go ascertain that
Get
information.
information. Yeah.
You know, um, and that's where, like, I I'm not a big, like, regrets kind of
Hmm.
person. Like, it's just not how I live my life, because I would say most of the time, the vast majority, I am making the best decision based on the information that I have in that moment in time. You
Hmm.
know, I can always look back later and think, well, I probably would have done this differently if I had
If I
known
had
X,
known.
Y, Z.
Yeah.
And if I did something or didn't do something that didn't allow me to know X, Y, Z, then okay, maybe now, I don't know that regret's the right word, but maybe now I at least reconsider how I think about that
That.
thing, or
Yeah.
that action, or that
Right.
inaction,
Right.
or
Like
whatever.
that, the maintenance crew who pulled that chain out of the canal,
Yeah.
if they hit another big snag
Right.
where the equipment designed to do the job isn't doing the job, they're probably going to stop and consider and ask and reach out rather
Yeah.
than just, no, blindly just keep
Well, you
going
would hope
at it.
so.
Well, there's that. So I literally have in my notes, regret is for when you know you weren't making the right choice and it doesn't work out. Because
Yeah.
you could make the wrong choice and you'd be like, this is probably the wrong choice, and I know I should make a better choice, but I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah.
Something bad happens, you're like, yep, nope, shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But then it also can work out, and so
Well,
there
and I
there
mean,
is a weird
yeah.
push pull
Well,
there.
I think there, like if we're talking about like from a leadership standpoint or a coaching standpoint or whatever, if you're managing a team of risk takers
Hmm.
versus a team of risk mitigators,
Yeah.
um, you can't manage those people in the same way,
Right.
right? And
Right.
you have to make allowance for, all right, look, if my team is risk takers, I know for sure there's going to be there is built in, we're going to get it wrong sometimes.
Hmm.
Like there
Yeah.
has to be,
Yeah.
you know. And on the other side, if I'm managing a team of risk mitigators, there's built in, all right, we're going to miss some opportunities sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's just
How it works. Yeah.
how it works. And so from a coaching management standpoint, leadership standpoint, whatever, you have to recognize maybe not just what your team is and what they're made of, but what their ultimate like goals and tasks are, and set them up for success based on that,
Yeah.
and who they are. Because you can't if you try to manage or lead a group of risk mitigators the way that you would a group of risk takers, you are everybody is going to be a hot mess.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to end up mad and frustrated and annoyed and whatever, and that's not going to be a successful team at all.
Right. And so you're starting to get into the motivation side of things, and I'm going to connect this to
Easy for you to say.
regulatory focus theory. It's been a rough one, guys. And this is
It's
just
cold outside.
I
Her
think that
mouth
does
is
kind of
frozen.
mess with everything. Rude. Carrot versus stick is essentially what we're looking at here in terms of motivation. But regulatory focus, why can't I say that word? Regulatory focus theory looks at two focuses, which are prevention focused or promotion focused.
Okay.
And now most people are going to have like a chronic tendency towards one of those,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still situational. It still changes based on what we're talking about and the decision making that's happening. But essentially, someone who's prevention focused, that's your more risk mitigator, where they would rather do something to avoid a bad outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to get this report done, and I don't get yelled at.
These are the people that play to not lose
Yeah, yeah,
instead of playing to win.
correct, absolutely. And then on the other side, promotion focused, they're going big. They're really motivated by the next level, the next goal, that sort of thing, and so they're pushing more. And so those are the two things that popped in my mind when you were talking about risk mitigators and risk takers.
Yeah. I think in our world, this is the difference between people that have a very self-defense mindset and people that have a more fighting mindset.
Mhm.
One side is playing to not lose.
Yeah.
And the other side is playing to win. I'm going to be more proactive. I'm going to control variables on the front end. I'm going to do as much as I can to mitigate risk, but then I'm also going to initiate,
Yeah.
if I need to, based on the information that I have at hand, as opposed to, all right, well, I'm going to wait and see how this plays out, and then I'll deal with it as it comes.
Right.
And I mean, there's an argument to be made for both approaches depending on the context, I think. And I think a lot of that is just personality driven. There are people in life, just not self-defense, people in life that are much more likely to initiate, much more likely. I just dropped a Substack article today about being first, about taking initiative, about not allowing yourself to overanalyze and allow fear to talk you out of doing the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sending the text, writing the letter, making the phone call, asking for the promotion, whatever it is. And I think everybody in life knows people that are on extremes of this, and extremes can definitely on either side be a problem. And you ideally, when to kind of go hard one way or the other and maybe play in between. So most of us are probably somewhere in between, but you know people that tend to trend more one way or the other. We at this table right here, we are sitting on opposite sides of this for sure.
Prevention focused, promotion
Yeah.
focused, risk mitigator, risk taker.
Yeah.
And what works is finding the balance. And if we pull that back to self defense, you can't always go out and be a risk taker. Sometimes
No.
it's not worth it to try to do something like big and be done with it type
Right.
thing when it's going to put you in a worse position.
Yep.
or, kill you.
Yep.
But if you're on my side and you're just constantly prevent, mitigate, you're not getting out of that entanglement. You do have to push. And so when we bring people on the mats, you start to see where people land.
Mm-hmm.
You get the people who walk in and they're like, oh, okay, we're fighting, like, let's go all in. And then you have the people day one that are, I don't want to hit him. I don't want to hurt him.
Yep.
I don't, that sort of thing.
I saw both of those last night in my jiu-jitsu class.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The extremes. They were if you were going to put a photo for definitions of the things we just described, I had one of each in my class last night.
I think that's common, and helping them understand when they can be themselves and then when they need to go to the other side is important. I see Mike did this to a degree with his pressure fighter, Mike Pasesco, the IC one. Anyway, he did this to a degree in his hard ready session, I feel like, where he had some pressure fighters and he had counter strikers and split us into groups.
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention during his session.
To be fair, he was behind a camera trying to film everything, so he wasn't really, but he didn't mean it quite the way he said it, Mike.
He very much meant it exactly the way he said it.
Anyway, there's a time to be a pressure fighter, and there's a time where pressure fighters need to use some counter striking and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so understanding when it's like, okay, be yourself. Ooh, Ted Lasso, great example. Jamie Tart will give you a signal when it's time to be a prick. We're going to teach you like how to not be, how to pass, but then when it's time to be who you are, go.
Yep.
So, all right. You brought up intention and meaning well and that sort of thing. And I found an incredible quote when I was researching this, and I had to go find who it was attributed to. So I'm not sure if you've heard it before. But the quote is, "Meaning well is only half our duty. Thinking right is the other and equally important half." And that's from Samuel Gridley Howe, an American physician, abolitionist, and advocate for education of the blind. Do you know who that is?
I don't think so.
I was going to give more about him somehow within this conversation. And so I started reading his Wikipedia page, and I was like, we'd have to do a whole podcast on him. I don't know where to start. It's intense. He was everywhere doing everything. And
read the quote again.
"Meaning well is only half our duty. Thinking right is the other and equally important half."
Okay.
So for example, if I want to get you a Christmas present, I mean well. And so I get you a giant stack of Kobe beef. I didn't really think, right?
And I can tell you right now, over the years, I've experienced this in a few different ways. I would rather somebody not give me anything
Then give you
than
something you
give
have to
me
waste,
something
or...
that clearly I have zero use for whatsoever. I find it considerably more offensive than you just not giving me anything. Not that I get offended, because I don't care, but it makes me question the person. I know people that are incredibly thoughtful. Bruce Gordon is one of these people.
Yeah.
He's a member at our Charlotte Center, has been there for a long time. He's one of the more thoughtful people that I know. And he to me is like the example of what somebody that is actually thoughtful and intentional and purposeful when they give something, say something, do something, as opposed to, all right, well, I feel obligated to
show my appreciation with a physical gift.
Yes. So I'm going to just go to Amazon and be like, gifts under $30. And, skip it. I would rather you send me an email that has 2 or 3 sentences in it that I can tell demonstrates how you feel about whatever we're talking about, as opposed to some
innocuous gift that's gonna go nowhere. Bruce, one of the best email writers and card
makers,
there is out there for sure. All right, see how we're doing. So we've talked a good bit about intent, why you're doing something, and thinking fully through it, not just meaning well, but having thought behind actions with a goal that's driving you, but you're not so stuck on the goal that you forget to adapt and move and switch between variables. And I want to use this very specific example from a very specific video that I have not shown him yet, and I'm debating if I ever will. And it's an individual talking about striking versus somebody with a knife.
Okay. Is this an individual I know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't know him.
Okay.
So I don't think so. But I don't think he's not unfamiliar to people. Like,
Okay.
our audience might not know him. Anyway, the argument was striking isn't good because if I just try to control the weapon arm with one hand while I hit with the other hand, I don't have control. Or something essentially to that nature. The video wasn't super well done. Obviously, it got under my skin enough from the week ago or whatever that I saw it that I was like, we're doing an episode on it. But it's a good example of how you get so caught up with, well, the goal is maybe not get stabbed, go home and be safe, right? So I'm not going to do this thing because if I do it, I could get stabbed or whatever. And it ignores a lot of other parts and understanding. I'm not just necessarily let me have you talk.
What am I talking about?
I don't know. Ryan, how do you feel about striking versus somebody with an edged weapon?
It depends.
Great.
I mean, I think this is a good example of confirmation bias. Somebody that probably has good intent, but their own biases have allowed them to ignore the process and ignore variables and ignore the reality of a situation because they're so outcome focused. The path of least resistance for them is to not do the things that scare them or frighten them and to do the things that are very familiar to them. And so we just pretend that other stuff either doesn't exist or that it's just bad.
That's what I said. You didn't hear me say that. I'm so glad I let you say that because that's exactly how I wanted that to happen. Great. No.
See how this works?
So the big thing that got stuck in my head was that I felt like from the video, their goal was thinking of striking as a way to like end the fight. Like, I'm trying to punch them in the face, knee them in the groin to be able to get away and get done. But that's not necessarily what striking does. I'm going to throw punches with the intent that it's going to take their consciousness, but I might use striking to set up a better position for wrestling, a better takedown. I might use it to get away. I might use it to close space. It's not that striking just has one purpose. And I felt like that's where they got caught up on.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, it's very easy, I think, especially in our industry, to have this myopic kind of approach to whatever, the last video that you saw, the last attack that you saw, the last anecdote that you heard, whatever, and you let that kind of color the way that you move forward, as opposed to just taking it for what it is, face value. This is information. It's information that I can use to help me kind of maybe mold and massage what I'm doing, but I'm not gonna just look at this video and all of a sudden be like, oh, well, I have to change my entire approach to dealing with a knife or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like when somebody says, well, what would you do if somebody tried to stab you like this? Well, I don't know. Where am I?
And does what I do matter for you?
We literally just had another stabbing on a public bus this week. So the whole, Nike defense thing, like, awesome, that's great. But
run away.
Where are you running?
Yeah.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
Okay. And so maybe I need to hit that guy so I can get my hands on him. Maybe I hit that guy so I can go pick things up. I don't know. Or maybe I have to go straight to grabbing him. It makes us feel better to have things in nice little clean boxes. It makes us feel more comfortable when things are neat and tidy, which I get. I totally understand it in self-defense. I understand it in life. But that's never been the way that I've existed.
Yeah.
So while I can understand it and see it in other people, I also wholly realize that that's just not how things work.
Right.
Right. I do think, and maybe I'm wrong on this in terms of like timing, but I do think there has been this kind of cultural shift towards praising meaning well.
Yeah.
And instead of putting real value on intent, meaning well. I don't know how much meaning well really matters at the end of the day. It's probably not a popular thing to say.
Placate yourself.
Yeah,
make you feel better.
Yeah,
about
I think.
It. Yeah.
And again, I get it. I understand why as humans we do that, but it goes back to am I being helpful or am I trying to feel helpful?
Yeah.
You know, did I send the gift because I felt like I had to, or did I send the email because I had some really heartfelt things to say? You know, like I feel like the whole meaning well thing has given people a pass on doing well.
Right. And the hard thing to wrap your head around here is that you can do well, mean well, ask questions, make the right decision, and still get an adverse outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Still not get the thing that you want, and still not have it go the way that you wanted
Sure.
it to go. And if you take that as like an entire life way of thinking now, like, well, it's all or nothing thinking.
Yeah.
Well, I did everything I could to be right and do the right things, and it still went wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put less effort in. I'm not going to work as hard, that sort of thing. That's one way that you can take that. Or you count it for what it is.
Which guarantees pretty much
that it will always go that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're going to end up in that loop and you're never going to get out of it.
Yeah.
You know. But again, I think some of that's personality. I can take an L and recognize it for what it is and keep it moving. You know, like I am relatively unbothered. I might take a day to sit on it and be like, this is BS and whatever, but then I'm on to the next thing. I'm like, all right, well, that's information for me, but it's not defining me.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I think a lot of people let that define them. You know, whatever that loss was, now is going to dictate their next 6 endeavors. You know,
Yeah.
which they probably never even get off the ground because they're still living on that last loss.
Right.
You know, it's
Well,
compound effect. It's, you know, Darren Hardy's stuff. It's this idea that I'm going to allow past performance to dictate what future performance looks like. And I mean, if that's your thinking, then that's what will happen, for better or worse. I mean, it works both ways.
And I think that comes back to not understanding where regret is actually reasonable or not. It's
Right.
like understanding where it actually makes sense to stress or worry about something, or
Yes.
that's.
Do I have control over it?
Mm-hmm.
Is there something I can do about it? You know, am I choosing to do something about it or not?
Right. So if you're stressed over something that you could do something about, but you're choosing not to,
Right.
regret comes
That's
up.
where regret
you're
happens.
making,
Yeah.
you're making the wrong decision, even though you have the information available to make the correct decision.
Yeah. If I make the best decision that I could based on the information that I had at that time, and I end up wrong, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I am. Like, I will keep it moving, you know, like, well, I did the best I could do based on what I knew in that moment in time. I'm not going to sit and dwell on that and let it kind of form what happens to me over the next decade or the rest of my life. Now, again, like you said, if I made a decision to do or not do, knowing that it was against the best information that I had at that time, then okay, that's something you can, you know, take ownership of and recognize and acknowledge and whatever. But still,
it's also something you can change.
Yeah.
You know,
like there's no point in allowing it to shape what you're going to do next beyond the fact that you should just recognize, okay, well, I knew this was not the right thing to do. This was not the direction to go in. This was not the action to take or whatever. And so next time, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. I do think you can kind of wreck yourself with hindsight, especially because once like the event has passed, whatever happened has passed, it's just so easy to feel like you were just so close.
Yeah.
You know, one of the examples I heard recently is and this was about a similar like decision-making theory in terms of prevention focused and what motivates us, fear of losing something versus goal of gaining something.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a lottery ticket, you have a lottery ticket, and they both have the exact same odds of winning, and you ask, hey, can we trade tickets? It shouldn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
But the thought of me having had like a winning ticket and handing it to you and now you win it is way more uncomfortable than the thought of you have a winning ticket and I don't, and we switch and I win.
Mm-hmm.
And so most people won't trade you tickets, even though it shouldn't make any difference. It doesn't technically matter, you know, rationality being predictably irrational.
Yeah.
Cool.
which is a great book if you haven't read it.
Predictably Irrational.
Predictably Irrational. Dan Ariely.
Yeah, I was going to let you say that because I didn't know how to say it.
Well, I don't know how to spell it.
Arely.
I can spell it.
I say Airly, but I don't know if that's right.
Ariely.
Beautiful.
Great book. And he's got a follow-up as well.
Yeah.
At least one.
I can't remember what that one's called. We have both of them.
We do.
Understanding that idea in and of itself, I mean, that idea spans businesses, marketing, everything. How you make decisions, everything. Relationships. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Really want to know how to manipulate your partners, like business partners.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I'm still in that category. Okay.
Jiu-jitsu partners.
Jiu-jitsu partners. So the last kind of like anecdote I do want to, on that note, the last anecdote I do want to take this down is doing a thing, it not working out, but setting up your next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to divide this into two sides. So 2 sides for this. I want to start with a striking example because I feel like it happens a little bit more obviously. And then we'll look at a jiu-jitsu example too, because jiu-jitsu. But anyway, I go to round kick you, I miss, or you step back, and I end up in this kind of bladed sideways stance, and then you walk into my side kick. You'll have to pretend because I know you don't do that. But, or maybe I intentionally throw the round kick short so that as you approach thinking that I'm out of the game, I'm ready to send that kick.
Mm-hmm.
Outcome is the same.
Yeah.
Process, wholly different.
Yeah.
And if I'm sending that round kick with the idea like, oh, I'm going to fake it when they come inside kick, it may work. Mm-hmm. They may also be able to sniff it out a little bit more readily than I'm going to commit everything I have to this round kick, and if it lands, it's going to be great, and if it misses, I'm still going to set up the next thing.
Right. Well, and I mean, that goes down to, again, like the idea of learning to fight.
Yes.
Because you now, if you miss the round kick, it's not like you're going to take the next 10 seconds to contemplate why you missed the round kick, what you did that allowed them to recognize the round kick was coming, blah, 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 whatever, because you're going to get punched in the face over and over again while this is happening. Which happens with people that are relatively new or that have not been trained to understand, all right, well, we're just problem solving in real time, and, everything works and everything doesn't work, and I just keep it moving.
Yeah.
So if I give everything I've got to this round kick and I miss, I'm not dwelling on that. Right. I'm moving on to what the next
thing I'm going to put everything into. Yeah.
And so I think while there is a big difference in the two ways that you laid those out, yes, the outcome is ultimately the same, but the first one where I'm giving everything I've got and I miss it and I adapt, I just keep it going. That comes because I've been allowed to develop critical thinking. I've been allowed to problem solve. I've been allowed to have this freedom, as opposed to you throw this round kick, they will fall down and go into a fetal position, and the fight's over.
Yeah.
You're
right. So same thought process then for we take it to jiu-jitsu. I'm going to do a hip bump sweep. I want to be able to sweep you over, flip you over, get to front mount, or I hit it, you stop me, you stuff me down, and so I jump over your arm and hit a triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be the same thing where I'm trying to bait you with the hip bump sweep rather than actually hit it.
Yeah.
Versus I'm getting everything I have to this hip bump sweep, you anchor down, and I move on to the next thing.
Same thing, right? I mean, I have a clear path of what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to use a fake or a feint or some subterfuge or whatever to make you think I'm doing one thing, but I really want the other one. And in the other instance, it's, I really want this thing. It doesn't happen, but I'm not going to get bogged down in the minutia of why it didn't happen, or I'm not going to dwell on it and, get all in my feelings and my emotions and just sit down and think, well, I had the best of intentions. I meant well.
with this hip bump sweep.
It's like, I've already forgotten that I tried to sweep you because now I'm trying to finish the triangle.
Yeah, you're right. And that's so important to understand as a student on the mat is like, if you get caught up in the, man, I really thought I had that, or I was so excited that I was in the position to do this and it didn't work out, you're going to miss the next 20 things.
Well, and what happens a lot of times is you just keep trying that same thing over and over again. You know, it's like, I know I'm in the right place. I know I've got the right setup. This is supposed to work, you know, and so you just keep banging your head against the door, you know, and it's dog chasing a car kind of thing. You know, I shared a video with you and Eli the other day of a guy in UFC getting von Flue choke off of a pass with a guillotine, and the guy ended up getting von Flue choke from like half guard, and at that level, that really just should not happen. No. Like, it just should not happen.
Yeah.
But when you start factoring in adrenaline and fatigue and whatever, and you're so dogged thinking, I know I've got this. I know I have this guillotine. I've got his neck. And you lose sight of the fact that the guy's passing your guard, you know, and by the time he's past your guard, it's too late, you know. So you get so task fixated, so goal driven, so outcome. At some point, you almost have to become outcome agnostic.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, at some point, it's like, all right, well, yes, I have an ultimate goal of winning this fight.
Yes.
It's not predicated on me finishing this guillotine necessarily.
Yes.
This guillotine may get me there.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It doesn't have to be the thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So being, I don't know that outcome agnostic is the right phraseology there.
No, but I like it, that up. And I can see it on a shirt.
But it's, I have an outcome in mind, but I don't care how I get there necessarily. I can't be so fixated on the guillotine or the chain in the canal that I lose sight of my ultimate goal,
right.
which is to win the fight or to clean the canal.
Right. Yeah. Well, and how you judge, like, if you don't have a good barometer for success, you're not going to be able to do that either. Because maybe you did go into that fight thinking, I'm going to win by guillotine.
Right.
Now you just really messed yourself up.
And really, you know, maybe you studied this guy that you're fighting, and he's been finished by guillotine in 3 out of 8 fights, and he exposes his head and neck a lot, and you're like, all right, well, this is the game plan.
Here we go. That's the one. Yeah.
You know?
But you have to be ready to move into your second plan A.
Yeah.
Because even though that was the game plan, holding on to that thing longer than you should was a problem.
Because what you don't know is he's also been studying his film.
Yeah.
And he's recognized how he's getting caught in the guillotines and how there's an opportunity for him to pass when that's happening. You know, so like
there are 2 sides to these equations.
Yeah. And again, you only control one side of it.
Yeah.
You know.
It's funny because I was going to use this example of, okay, I'm getting ready for a jiu-jitsu competition, and so, you know, I'm training my own game. Maybe I did a little bit of looking up, or maybe I had my coach look up a little bit about their style, their height, their weight, whatever it is. And so you start getting a general game plan. But then when you get in the mix, you can't, there's a balance of what's the game plan, find your way onto it. But then you have to know when it's time to bail out of it.
Yeah. This is getting probably too far outside of, but I don't like cornering fights. Never have. I've done it a good bit, not in a long time, but my general approach was I don't really care what the other person, like, we need to have a good understanding of, okay, do they have a really strong wrestling base, or are they a good kickboxer or whatever? But like, you get too far in the details of this person likes to do, the
interchange of this to this is
that can mess you up.
Yeah.
Because you become outcome focused to the degree that I'm going to finish this fight this way.
Yeah.
You know,
that's where you have to have people that see the forest through the trees, but you then also have to have people looking at the trees. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to balance when you're the main point of contact. Like, you have to be the one doing both. It's just usually pretty unrealistic. Those are my things.
Cool.
That's our look at You Meant Well, or did you? If you enjoyed this podcast, leave us all the stars. Remember, it's the thought that counts, and we thought about having a good podcast, and we meant to have a good podcast. So that should alone get us 5 stars, lots of comments, engagement on social media. And then if you didn't enjoy this podcast, right, like, it's the thought that counts. So just
still give us 5
commenting
stars.
5 stars, because it's not really about the content, it's about the thought behind it.
Sure.
All right. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to growing with you next time.
Thanks, everybody.